You're listening to Leadership Recalibrated, where we dismantle outdated leadership playbooks and explore the new way to lead. I'm Lori Lalonde, founder of Her Executive Ascent, and I created this podcast because I was tired of hearing the same recycled advice about what it takes to be a good leader. You know the scripts: be more confident, lean in, develop executive presence. But what if those scripts were written for a leadership model that no longer works? What if the future of leadership looks less like commanding authority and more like strategic influence, emotional intelligence, and authentic power? Each week, we take on the questions most leadership programs avoid, the power dynamics nobody teaches, and the decisions that actually shape your career. This is where you stop following the old rules and start designing the leadership career that fits who you are now and where you're going next. Let's recalibrate. Welcome to Leadership Recalibrated, a leadership insight series by Her Executive Ascent. I'm Lori Lalonde, CEO and founder of Her Executive Ascent. Menopause affects every woman, and yet for most of us, nobody talked about it. Not our mothers, not our grandmothers, not our aunts. We were handed silence and expected to figure it out alone. Today's guest is refusing to accept that. Lisa R. Triggs, known as the Menopause Queen, is a certified menopause coach, motivational speaker, best-selling author, and podcast host who began her own perimenopause journey at 38 and spent nearly a decade not knowing what was happening to her body. By the time full menopause arrived, she was navigating so many symptoms, including depression, insomnia, and a deep sense of disconnection from herself that took her to the lowest point of her life. What happened next is the reason she is here today. Instead of letting menopause define her, Lisa turned her pain into purpose. She began documenting her experience, writing her story, and developing the tools and frameworks that eventually became her best-selling book, The Menopause Mindshift: How I Unleashed My Inner Queen and You Can Too. Through visualization, meditation, journaling, and a mindset shift that changed everything, she rebuilt herself from the inside out and came out the other side not just surviving menopause, but calling it one of the most powerful chapters of her life. Her mission now is to make sure no woman has to navigate this alone or in silence ever again. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast today, Lisa. I'm so glad that you're here with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Lori. I'm excited and honored to be here.
Me too. I think this is going to be a wonderful conversation. I can't wait to get into it. So, you've spent 20 years navigating every stage of menopause. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's officially 20 years now because I just had a birthday last week. So yeah. I
Happy
started. Oh,
birthday.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So I started Peri when I was 38. I know that. And I just turned 58. So it's been a full 20 years now.
Wow. And you described finding your power in the middle of it, like not after it. So, I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah. So I basically, I was having a really hard time with things for many years, like 7 years, and 5 of it was depression and all that kind of stuff. So really, really became and got to a low point, the lowest point, and then started to work my way back. So yeah, that was a bit of an evolution. And the reason I ended up sharing my story and writing my book and doing my own podcast and all that kind of stuff now is because what I learned along the way was that I really needed to focus on myself. And once I started doing that and working on myself and how I felt about myself and saw the chain reaction, going on into other areas of my life, because I was letting the symptoms control me, right? Really was. I was letting them control me. So I had to teach myself how to get control of them and me manage them and know what to do, if I started having a hot flash, or if I wasn't feeling my best even mentally, that kind of thing. And how everything works together: mind, body, spirit, physical, mental, emotional.
Yeah, that's quite a journey. And I want to acknowledge the resilience that you demonstrated going through that. When did you identify, hey, it's time for me to take control? Where did what was that starting point? What did that look like?
It was not long after I kind of reached the lowest of lows and did hormone therapy for a while, did all that, but decided long term that wasn't a long term solution for me. I had been a student of the law of attraction and so forth before, in the early 2000s when The Secret came out and so forth, kind of started adopting some habits from that a little bit. So I started drawing on that a little bit more, you know, researched a little bit more, bought Rhonda Byrne's new books and kind of dove myself into that. I kind of put myself in the middle of all that was positive and started reevaluating myself and realizing that I had been looking about everything with a negative lens, everything, and specifically menopause, right? And we get stuck there we think because everybody tells us, oh, it's going to suck, so then we get that in our heads, oh, it's going to suck and oh, it sucks. And, this is terrible and it's awful and all that kind of stuff. And I had gotten stuck there. And I think a lot of women do. We get stuck there and with how much it sucks. But when I started changing my perspective without it, started looking for any possible small thing that was good about it, whether it was just the mere fact that I didn't have to plan my travel around monthly cycles anymore. Little things like that even, started to look at myself in the mirror instead of thinking, look at me, look at how much weight I have gained, because I gained more than 40 pounds. I just literally was not myself in this body. So when I started to change my perspective, everything started to fall into place, and the perspective it was a chain reaction. Started to be grateful for more. Even my husband saw it. My husband now is a coach as well. He said, "I want what she's doing." I literally said to him, I came to my office, out of my office, and said, "I have been thinking about everything negatively, like him, our relationship, all the troubles we were having. He had his own set of problems. How much everything sucked and how bad I felt." But when I started putting those things into place and remembering that I had a pretty good life, I was very lucky still to be, in that long term relationship. This September, we'll be married 35 years. So
Nice.
um, I was very lucky in a lot of ways. Even basic stuff like, yeah, I have a roof over my head. I have
Yep.
a fridge I can open and go get something to eat at any time. It may sound silly, but those count. And then I started incorporating what I call my 8 core elements now. I started to move my body. I listened to frequency music, like I said, surrounded myself with positive things. I found the right kind of community for me that with like-minded people and so on and so forth, and built my way back. And then decided, you know what? I think I need to share this with other women because they need to know this, that we all have it within ourselves, right? We make choices every day on how we feel, how we think, how we act, what we say, what we do. That's
100%. I love that. And there's nothing silly about what you said or trivial. I embrace that 100%. The mindset shift is the biggest shift that makes the difference. And it's interesting because in Western culture, menopause is looked at in a negative light. And in Asian cultures, I believe that it is considered, the next chapter, like kind of a
Mhm.
reinvention. I had someone on my podcast recently talk about this.
Yeah, I've heard
And
that as well. Yeah.
oh my gosh, right? And what a difference that makes when looking at it through that lens and realizing that this isn't the end of something. This is just the beginning of something new of how I move through the world. And I love that. And the mindset shift is everything. And reminding yourself of all of the things that are going well and that are, I do the same thing, by the way. Anytime my partner is in his negative mindset. So I say the same things. I'm like, we have a roof over our head. We have food in the fridge. We don't even have to think about what we're buying for groceries because I remember a time back in started my career with 2 babies where every penny counted because I didn't have much money. So going to the grocery store was an exercise in just in time calculations, like math, right? Like this costs this much and this is taxed and this is it to the dollar. So that before I even got to the register, I made sure I wasn't over. And that the energy spent just in doing that and how anxiety inducing that was and just knowing that a lot of people right now even
Mhm.
are dealing with that with the cost of groceries going up, inflation, that people are living paycheck to paycheck, not able to, buy groceries just at will, right? Like
Mhm.
they're making trade-offs. I was in that situation at one time in my life, just even making trade-offs on which bill do I pay versus what groceries do I buy? And, trying to balance it and it's awful. And so those aren't trivial things. Those are things that we definitely celebrate that I'm in a position where I am fortunate that I am blessed with this, that I have all of this in my life. People are at different stages and people have different challenges. And I am just grateful where I went from that to being able to pull myself out of it by the career that I chose
Mhm.
and eventually get to a place where I was stable. But that was a long road. So, not trivial at all. Absolutely love your story. I love the mindset shift because I do believe when we put positive out into the universe, we get it back.
Absolutely. And there's science behind that, right? And I keep talking about that more and more. That there's not only neuroscience. Science tells us we're energetic beings. Atoms, neurons, that's energy, right?
Yeah.
We actually vibrate at certain frequencies. So I know for
Yeah.
myself, when I was depressed for all those years, that was a low vibration, right? That was what I was emitting. So that's what I was receiving. So when I started, choosing happiness and choosing joy and being grateful, that's the energy I'm putting out. That's the energy I receive back.
So we grew up at a time where none of the women in our lineage talked about this. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, nobody talked about this. But
Right.
you went from navigating it privately and getting to a point where you're like, you know what? I'm going to do this for other women. I'm going to help other women navigate this. And you became a certified coach,
Mhm.
best-selling author, podcast host, and you have that specific focus and mindset around helping women that are navigating this and helping them balance out their nervous system through this stage of life. So, what was the moment where you decided this is what I have to do right now?
It's hard to describe really. You know how you just it's almost like a calling? I don't know. It's just this intuitive voice that said to me, write your book. Tell your story. I mean, to be honest, initially it was a negative story. Initially, it was all the things that were so wrong about it. But as I was going through my own transformational journey, the book transformed as well and became this is where I was and this is where I am now and this is how I got there. This is what I did to get to where I am now, to be able to live the life that I choose and be happy and not let the symptoms overtake me, because I still do get symptoms. I still get hot flashes. That is the one thing, hot flashes, that annoys me the most. I recently did a meditation, but during the meditation, it talked about stress. We allow ourselves to be stressed. She defined stress as not taking responsibility for ourselves and our actions. And I went, that was a deep thought moment. I kind of thought about, I went, wow. And I've listened to that same meditation a few days in a row because it really, really resonated with me. And I agreed with it. We allow these things because I know because I did it. I talk about it all the time. I say it in my book. I allowed it. I allowed these things to take control of me. And we talk about stress because stress is a big part of it. We're going through hormonal stress, right? Our bodies are stressed. But where is the stress coming from?
I want to dig in a little bit on that because,
It's deep.
yes, I mean, there is an aspect that we absolutely take accountability for. And it really requires, some contemplation and some intentionality around what's driving the stress. What can I do to reduce that for myself, to put myself in a better space?
Mm,
But then women at our stage, a lot of them are dealing with aging parents,
yes.
work demands that are absolutely unattainable at this point. I feel like corporate's in hyperdrive right now, and the type of work that they're doing is not meant for one person. It's meant for like a team. Like everybody is overloaded. And
Mm,
then there may be people who also have children that might be just going off to post-secondary, and and then we have inflation.
yeah. All these changes
All the
all at once.
so much is happening. So walk me through. So someone comes to you, they're dealing with this. Plus, they're perimenopause symptoms. How do you guide them through that? Because the minute I think they hear, well, take accountability for the stress, they're going to be like,
How
how? There's so
about
many things.
you? Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's ways to beat around the bush and get to the point, right? If someone comes to me and has all this on their plate, tell me what's going on in your life. I encourage the inner journey, right? To figure out what is causing the stress, right? Like we say, work stress, relationship stress, hormonal stress. Okay, well, what can we do to own it and then reduce it,
Yeah.
right? And by own it, I mean, acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And that's probably that component of taking the responsibility is acknowledging it, right? I have all these things going on in my life right now, and I'm allowing them, right? I'm allowing them in this moment, I'm allowing them to overwhelm me, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Because I was there. Definitely. Overwhelm was huge. I would get overwhelmed at the littlest thing, right?
Yeah.
Littlest thing would overwhelm me. And then I work with people to put a plan in place. Like I'm working on my second book right now, and it's going to be out in time for menopause month in October. And it's the menopause Mindshift again. How to master menopause symptoms in 30 days. So it'll be
Mm.
a 4-week actionable plan,
Oh, I love
right?
that.
And my work is based on the 8 core elements that helped me and things like moving our body, listening, with the key focus of reducing that stress, but also working on yourself, right? Improving that self-love
Yeah.
because that's the foundation. That's the key component is how we feel about ourselves. And these are the tools that we use to move through it, right? Look ourselves in the mirror and be able to say, yeah, I love the person looking back at me because I was there too. I didn't recognize the person looking back at me, right? This shell of a woman. So by doing these actionable things like meditation, you're calming your body, you're calming your nervous system. So that's science backed. Meditation is actually a science backed technique that's proven to, aid your body, to react to your body in a certain way when you do it, right? And when you're in that relaxed state, that's when you can see your life. You see yourself than the life that you want, right? How you want to be living your life. And these are very impactful things. They're small, but put together, they're very impactful. Going back to that gratitude, right? And
Yeah.
that energy. So
Yeah.
we help walk through people through how to be able to live their lives. And I'll be clear, this is a lifestyle choice, right? You're creating a specific lifestyle for yourself that is in a specific energy that is going to allow you to reduce your symptoms and live your best life.
I want to go back to something you said because this is something I've been noticing a lot, more so with women at the stage along with me, like women in my circle, friends, relatives. And I noticed the self love piece. It's like, it's not that to say that they don't love themselves, because they do. I'd say it's more around the self compassion is not there. And so the way that we were raised, we were never enough. Like we
Mm.
were told we were never enough constantly. Media and like our appearance, how we show up, or you're too loud, or you're too this, you're too that. Always an opinion about how we looked, how we dressed, how we talked, how we acted, what we wanted to do. And so, what I find at this stage and when I'm catching, and I think this is because I went through therapy and I had to go through this exercise myself. So, I'm hyper aware of it. And this was years ago that I went through this, but I see it now in a lot of women. The negative self talk is so prevalent. And so, one thing that I've challenged someone that I care about very deeply in my life with was just pointing it out in the moment, like saying, do you notice how when you say that to yourself, is that the same thing you would say to me? Is that the same thing you would say to somebody else? And so I've given her this challenge of take a jar and every time you catch yourself saying something negative about yourself, put a marble in the jar, even like something in the jar, so that over the course of a week, a month, 6 months, you can see how often that happens. And maybe just even the action of doing something like that makes you more mindful of the fact that you are constantly tearing yourself down. And these are women that are so successful and type A and like they've achieved great things and still every day it's that negative self-talk, right?
I think part of it is Gen X. Now, not all Gen X parents were like this, but I come from a large family. I'm the youngest of 7 children. And in my day, children were seen and not heard. So that's part of the problem. So we have to look at those as well. We need to find a way to be able to shed what we're still carrying. And I think that, and I know this through my own experience, that when we reach this time of life, a lot of what we're still carrying comes back up. I've
Yep.
heard many times, even for myself, not only my own experience, but other, friends, and people I have talked to as well said, "Oh my God, I thought I dealt with that. And now all of a sudden it's back. I'm thinking about it again, or I'm reacting to it or whatever." And I think that's part of actually the hormonal changes, that we're going through because what it does to the brain, right? So we need to retrain our brains, right? We're retraining our brains with this positive reinforcement, so to speak, by surrounding ourselves. And like what you say about being intentional and being mindful of what we are saying and how we are thinking. And when we are mindful of that, that's when we can stop and pause and redirect. But that takes work and that takes acknowledgement, right? It takes to be present, to
Yeah.
remember that and live in the present, not the past. That I think is one of the best ways to be able to shed the past traumas is to actually be mindful that I need to stay present because I can't change what went on back then. I can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it anymore. So I have to find a way to release it. Whether you write it down, you tear it up, you burn it, your releasing ceremonies and all that kind of thing, they are quite effective to be able to write something down and actually say, now that I've written this down, I am releasing it and tear it up and get rid of it and burn it.
Yeah.
I even say this about past journals. Don't hold on to journals where you have all negative stuff because that's actually staying with you. Get rid of that. Throw it away, burn it. These are little things that are very, very impactful and they do make a difference. You're shedding it, you're releasing it, you're saying, you know what? This again, back to this isn't going to control me anymore, right? This isn't going to control me. I'm not allowing this to affect me anymore because I'm going to stay present right now. In this moment is the only moment that I can control. So I need to make the best of it.
And when I think about, because I work with women in leadership, and a lot of them are Gen X, they, definitely see
We
the
have that strength
stress.
about us, but there's
Yes.
also that vulnerability because that strength is the mask. I think a lot of times, right? The strength is the mask, and behind that mask, we're actually vulnerable. We don't have that. We lack self-confidence, right?
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's partly because of the generation we were raised in,
And throughout our careers even, made to feel like we didn't belong in the rooms that we were
right?
in corporate specifically, especially successful women that climb the ladder.
Yeah,
Um, and so when I think about the leader that is in a meeting, 9 in the morning, and she is just dysregulated, but like you said, wearing the mask, pushing through it, and by the end of that meeting, she's completely drained.
exhausted. Yeah.
So, have you worked with women that are doing this? Like they are wearing the mask, but to their own detriment. And what would you recommend instead?
I'm fairly new to the coaching part of it,
Yeah.
right? Started off as the author, podcast host, and speaking and so forth. So I have talked and been in rooms with many women who are in that position and wore that mask even myself. So I can definitely relate to it. I would go back to what I was just saying,
Mhm.
right? Because there's um that whole acknowledgement and that whole self-worth and that whole self-love that is going on beneath the surface. And like we say, part of it is generational because of the time we came up. If you think about it, us women now, and even men for that matter, all Gen Xers, we're really the trendsetters
Yes, we are.
because we've seen the computer age, right?
Yep.
We've been a part of that. That's been a part of our careers. And now we're seeing the AI age, right? And be able to adopt and live with that.
Yeah.
So we got to give ourselves more credit. We were alive and growing up in one of the most dynamic parts of history. If you think about it, when, post-war, right? Knock
Yeah.
on wood, it's been the longest time during our lifetime where we have not had a World War. And again, knock on wood that it stays that way, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm biased, so of course I believe Gen X is the best
we are the
generation.
best. We're the best.
We're the best.
The 80s, if you think about it, the 80s was a fantastic time to live. It really
Yes.
was. The pop at its height, we had Michael Jackson, you know, 80s rock and roll was uplifting and fun and the big hair and
Yeah.
you know, it was really a fantastic decade to be a teenager in.
Yeah. The one thing that I love about being a Gen Xer is knowing what life was like before smartphones, before the
Yes.
internet. Because for as much as I love technology, I see that with the upcoming generations that grew up on that, the only way of communication that they're comfortable with, for the most part, is digital. And having a conversation over the phone is something that is a learned skill that we
Yeah.
did, when we were little,
Or even
calling our
face to face,
friends
right?
or face to face. And not to say all, Gen Zers are like this, but there is a commonality where it does cause anxiety for them to pick up a phone, have a
Yeah.
conversation, and I see it in the the Gen Zs around me, and I understand why. It's because we grew up with rotary phones, and that was the way, and that's how we communicated with our friends. And I still remember when I was younger, having to make those phone calls initially felt awkward and uncomfortable, but because you do it so often, you then build your conversational skills, and that becomes a skill you build over time.
Yeah. Remember party lines?
Oh my god.
I didn't
I
quite
should not
understand
laugh.
what that was, and
Mm,
it came up in a conversation not that long
yeah,
ago, and I was like, "You know what? I remember it happening once." I think
yeah.
people in more rural areas were a party line, right? And this is one thing anybody listening or watching this is count your blessings that you were born during a time of indoor plumbing. I
Well,
couldn't imagine,
yes, I
you
would
know,
not.
or being a
Yeah,
woman back then, when they had their what did they call them back then? Courses. When they had,
yes.
their cycles and all that they had their courses. I think they used, like, just strips of fabric or something like that, you
Yeah.
know?
I will say, for as far as our menstrual cycles are and how fortunate we are to have the products that we have and all of the different ways that we can to be comfortable and to manage it, there are still places in the world where women don't have access to that.
You're
And
right.
I don't know if you've had a chance to read Melinda Gates's book, The Moment of Lift, but that was amazing. Like reading her story, but also about her journey in traveling to different parts of the world and seeing that women didn't have that easy access to something that we take for granted on the daily. And that's still happening in parts of the world, like we're so lucky that we have what the conveniences and the access to the products that we need in order to
Yeah.
be comfortable.
You're right, you're right. Yeah, I have a niece who works for Habitat for Humanity, and she's been even before that, I mean, she spent many years traveling around, she lived in Australia for a while, and she's been to Thailand, and, because part of what they do is help developing countries,
Yeah.
we don't think about but that does still exist. My daughter told me about this. We were talking about Greek history, and she's got a double degree in history. And back in those days, women were celebrated when they got their cycles because they were, fertile. They were women. They were, and I believe she said there's a time when almost every month it was celebrated. And then of course we have oppositely the cultures that are hide women and so forth.
Yeah.
So
No, yeah. I mean, what we go through, we should all have
Well, I think
awards.
about it in the workforce as well. Like, here we are. We are the ones that end up bearing children, right? And we want to be able to build careers for ourselves. And we also, as Gen Xers, have lived during the time where the two income household became the norm,
Yes.
right? Like our children were the first ones to go to daycare first time, full times. I was fortunate that I worked full time for I think 5 years. And then I was home for a while and then went back to work part time. So I was fortunate enough to be home for the teenage years and so forth. So I felt very lucky then because I was there when my children got home from school.
Yeah.
Those kids are the ones now that are in their mid 20s, early 30s and are becoming parents now themselves. So having that kind of life is the norm to them.
Yeah. I have, so my daughter's 30 and my son's 32 in December, and they have no desire to have kids, and I don't blame them. So I think there's even a lot of young adults that are at this stage where it's like the economy is not great, my
Mhm.
job prospects are not great, the amount of money I'm bringing in, barely I can barely sustain myself. How am I supposed to
Mhm.
even consider having a family? And then for women, it's like the workplace is hostile for women. And then, there was a period of time where I remember advocating for decades for other women, for myself, to share the challenges that we dealt with and to be taken seriously, all of these things. And it felt like we were starting to make progress. And now it feels like we're going backwards. So women constantly have navigated these challenges and come out stronger because of it and come out on top still, despite all the odds against us.
Mm.
And then right when we feel like we've achieved the pinnacle of our careers, we've talked about menopause and that feels like just yet another
Mhm.
thing that we're
Thing
dealing
that we
with.
have to deal with, yeah.
And so, and yeah, and especially at a stage where these are women in leadership and leading companies, leading teams. And it feels, and I know I felt it too, you feel this grief and you feel like, initially my whole thing was, I don't feel like myself and I just want to feel like myself again. And
Mhm.
this longing to be who you were before. How do you hold space for women who are feeling that way in the early stages where they're just like, they have that grief of missing out who they were before and just wanting to go back to who they were before, knowing that that's not gonna happen.
I think we need to honor and acknowledge who we used to be before, but then accept the opportunity ahead of you to
Yeah,
create a new path. Because
yes,
again, we can't live in the past, right? We can live in the present to forge that new future. And that's the one of the things I try and really talk about is it's okay. It's okay. You can even mourn who you used to be a little bit. You know what I mean? But it's important to know that it's okay to be able to become somebody new, somebody who might even be better. She's more knowledgeable. She's more wise. She's got that experience
yeah.
professionally, personally, right? She needs to give herself more credit. It's okay. You're creating somebody new. You're probably creating someone and a life that might even be better than what you had before. I know I am
Yes.
now. I'll take this life more than that life any day because of the choices that I make for myself. Let's be clear on that. These are choices that you're making for yourself. You're putting yourself first. And by doing that, you're creating what you want. And I think that's pretty cool.
I think so too. I love seeing where I'm at right now compared to where I was
And where you're going to
and
be,
and
right?
where I'm gonna
And where
be,
you're going.
like,
Where you
I
going?
definitely I'm definitely embracing this stage of my life right now, and there's things about being younger that I miss.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't trade it for the world based on what I know now, where I'm going, the place in life that I'm at. I love this version of me now. I don't
Uh-huh.
think I'd ever be friends with who I was at 20 or 30. To be honest, I think back, I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
I was a bit
Wow.
hyper back then. I was a bit hyper
Yeah.
back then. Really was.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and so you are the menopause queen and you
Yeah.
have a book, you have a journal, you work with women going through this change. So, have you seen what it looks like when they get on the other side of that grief, that initial, like where I'm at now, right? So there's the early stage where they're grieving, they're trying to hold on to what they feel they're losing, but then there's women that come out to the other side of it. Have you been able to experience that journey, and what does that look like?
Well, for myself, this is it, right? This
Yeah.
is me. I wear the tiara, I wear the pink. I'm
Oh,
I'm choosing, right? I'm
yes.
choosing to be joy. I'm choosing to be grateful like every day. This is a life I choose. The main thing to remember is this is choice. You can choose this life or you can choose that, right? I'm going to
Absolutely.
choose this life. because
Love.
this life is pretty awesome.
And I think the it all ties together in that when you take that time to manifest, to envision what success looks like for you, what you want in your life, regardless of like whether it's work or home or whatever.
Mhm.
But when you take that time and you have the daily reminders of being grateful for the things you have, showing gratitude for the people in your life, the love that you have, the roof over your head, all of those things, and you then show up to work or, to do what you need to do, you're showing up in a different way. You're much
Yeah,
lighter. You're much more relaxed. You're much more open than someone who has a negative mindset and it's like a fixed mindset of
yeah.
everything's always bad
They hate their
happening.
job, they hate this all that. Well, you know what? Maybe try and find, start with the one thing you might like about your job. What do you like
Yeah.
about your job today? One thing, right? And build from that. And even that one small little thing, right?
I used to just find a new job. The moment I knew I was in that cycle of negativity and toxic mindset because the workplace was not serving me, and that then by nature being a woman in tech, it's like it's a brutal, punishing environment to be in. So when I felt like I was at the end of my rope or there was no movement for me there, or I was just constantly feeling negative or dread about the work or the going into the office, I find another job. That
Mm.
lifted my spirits more than anything. Met new people, learned new
Yeah, new and
skills.
exciting. And that's okay. That's okay. You know what? That sometimes you do need that. Sometimes I I I can tell you I've again through my own experience, even in this last year, I've really the more I'm doing this and the more I'm talking about it, the more powerful I'm becoming.
Yes, I love that. I have one final question to
Yep.
ask you
Yeah.
before we wrap today.
Yes.
So, based on everything that we know, from how we were raised to how women show up in the workplace to how women approach menopause, what's one rule from the old playbook that tells women how to show up, perform, hold it together that you would want to retire immediately? And what would you replace it with?
Oh, goodness. I think that women have been given limitations previously because of these things, because we are, mothers, the caregivers, so forth, that we may have an expiry date, so to speak, because when we approach this time of life as well, right? And I think it's time to blow the glass ceiling off of that because we are capable of so much more. Stop limiting yourself.
Exactly. Hell
Stop
yes.
limiting yourself. Stop allowing yourself to feel limited because you are limitless. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You hear time and time again of people who are in their like 70s or even 80s that are going back to college and taking courses, just to keep their brain active. The more active we stay in our lives, the more active we will be in our lives. Staying active, staying productive, engaging in life.
Love it.
Powerful. Powerful.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where can people reach you?
Everywhere. Everywhere. Yeah, I'll make sure I give you all my links so that you can put it below if you want. I mean, most of my handle is at Lisa R. Triggs, as far as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. My website is either the menopausemindshift.com or the Menopause Queen. I'm on YouTube. Everything's at Lisa R. Triggs. And feel free to buy my book or my journal or watch the podcast. I'm actually in the midst of partnering with a company called Health Union to be able to write some articles for them.
Oh,
So, yeah,
congrats.
I've got lots of exciting stuff coming up.
Amazing. And we'll
Thank you.
have the links in the show notes. And when
Yes.
you publish that first article, send it my way. I definitely want to check it out and I will repost it to my networks as well. I think that's phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. What a great talk we've had today. I appreciate your time.
We have. Thank you.
Stop limiting yourself. You are limitless. I absolutely loved it when Lisa said that. And I want to make sure it lands with you because we have spent so long being told that this chapter of life is the beginning of the end, that the symptoms are something to endure, the changes are something to mourn, and that somewhere around midlife, women start to become less relevant, less capable, less powerful, less seen. That's the old story, and it is time to retire it. What Lisa has lived and what she is now teaching is the opposite of that narrative. Menopause is not an expiry date. It is an awakening, and the women who come out the other side of it, the ones who do the inner work, who stop letting the symptoms control them and start choosing differently, they do not come out smaller, they come out stronger. If this conversation resonated with you, you can find Lisa at themenopausemindshift.com. Her book, The Menopause Mindshift: How I Unleashed My Inner Queen and You Can Too, is available now on Amazon and wherever books are sold. Find her on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Lisa R. Triggs. All the links are in the show notes. If this episode gave you something you needed today, share it with a woman in your life who is navigating this chapter and needs to hear that she is not alone. Leave a comment and tell me what landed. And if you have a minute, a review goes a long way in helping this show reach more women who are ready to stop surviving and start thriving. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. The leadership advice that got many women this far will not necessarily get them where they want to go next. This phase of your career is not about working harder. It's about working strategically by deciding which rules still apply and which ones you are finally ready to outgrow. If this conversation resonated, stay with us, subscribe to the podcast, and join me here every Sunday for new episodes. And if it gave you language for something you've been carrying quietly, share it with another woman in your network who needs to hear it too. Until next time, lead with intention, question everything, and change the rules for the better. I'm Lori Lalonde, and this is Leadership Recalibrated.